Okay, for people who are joining this live stream, we are reviewing some functionality to do with web crawling for Wolfram Language. So what's the main function name that I should be looking for here?
Well, originally this was called web crawl, but we changed this to web crawl map.
Okay.
But it's whatever we want.
No, I understand, but I'm simply asking what's the documentation page that I'm looking at here?
Web crawl map.
Yeah, yes. Okay, so I have it here. Okay. So let's take a look at what we're looking at here. So this
I added an example. It has
I see the example. You're looking at the screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so let's take a look at what this is doing. So this is saying hash URL starting at that location. And what is this link extraction thing? Okay, that's how to extract a link. Is that right?
Yes, you can select which method to use for link extraction. And so you can either provide a function that will do the link extraction, or you can use the default extraction mechanism that has these parameters.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And why? Okay, so let's understand what this is doing here. So what are the possible, that hash URL thing up there? Okay, so web crawl f root. Okay, why doesn't it say the number of levels? I would think that the number of levels should be an argument.
It's an option. It's a max depth.
But I don't think that's the right thing to do. I think it's more consistent with, let's look at file system map, okay? Because that's what this is modeled after, right? So file system map has a level as the third argument, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's what we should do here. By the way, you are making a bunch of crackling noise on the phone. If you could try to figure out how to not crackle, it would be good.
Okay.
Okay, so so this is quite nice, I think. I mean, applies to an association containing data for each page and returns an association whose keys are the absolute URLs of the pages and the results. Okay, terrific. Okay, so now that's not the plain text of the HTTP response. That's the body, right? Which is a different thing. If I say something like URL read, if I'm not mistaken, how do I do this? So I say URL read, and then I go to, for example, what's a good example? Let's go to some fairly simple web page. Let's go to, I think this is a fairly simple page. Okay, now how do I see everything in the association for this HTTP response? I just say input form of that. Will I see everything? Oh my God. Okay, so there's a vital...
I think this is an object that has properties you have to query.
Okay, fine. But so it has headers. Okay, so in this case, okay. So I go to %26 and I say body, for example. Yeah, so that is not the plain text of the HTTP response, right? Is that the response or no, that's the body of the response, correct?
I don't get the difference.
Well, what about the headers and so on?
So this is the response. So this is just the body.
The contents, the message body.
I'm not following.
Okay. All of this other stuff. The response is, what the response should be is not, no, this is wrong, okay? There should be a thing here for...
An HTTP response has two parts, a set of headers and a body.
I'm aware, right, I'm aware.
And this is just the body. By
the way, this is wrong. I should change this. In the URL read, I know, but your description of it isn't right. Okay, so hold on a second. Contents of the message body. As in, following additional entries can be also included in the association. Oh, that's in the request.
Yes,
Okay,
because
so
you have
now wait.
body
When
as
we
well.
get the thing back, okay, body of the response. Yeah, that's what we should say here. Body of the response as a string, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, this should copy this. Now, I don't understand why you're not copying this whole document. I mean, this whole thing here. So there, you see that? I mean, that to me, well, there's some pieces that we don't need here. Okay, so I think you want the body, the status code, body byte array, body bytes, all of the stuff you could have in there, right? Headers, cookies, content type, the stream object to read the response body. You don't want that. You don't want the association there. You don't want those. You don't want those. Oh, symbolic HTTP response. You do want that, right? And in fact, you probably want to, because in other words, what you want to get, that wants to be a thing that is simply called HTTP response. Okay, so what is that? That is this thing here. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, the full thing. Yeah.
Right. So full symbolic HTTP response. Okay, so those are irrelevant. That's irrelevant. That's irrelevant. Okay, so this is going to require some cleanup on this page, but this is, I think, and those are irrelevant there. Now, content type. Yeah, so you need to combine that with what it said below, right? I don't know what order you want to put these in, but you can sort that out. Make sense? Yes?
Yeah.
No?
Yes.
Or should I do it?
No, yes. Yes.
Okay. All right, so let's take a look here. Okay, so I think also so I think this should go to one level by default. Do you agree or not?
I don't know.
Okay, but infinity doesn't make sense because that's crawling the whole web potentially.
No, well, I think that by default it should stay on the same domain.
Okay.
So maybe by default it should crawl a single domain entirely.
Okay, crawls
because
the
this
web
is
starting.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we probably want an option here for whether to go to a different domain.
Yes.
Yeah, well, here we go. This is the same host option, but that's not the right thing. For link extraction is a list.
Yes, I realize that it's confusing that some options are there and instead of being main options.
Yeah, I don't think that's right. Okay, so let's take a look here. So let's see. Oh, for goodness sake, we don't do this in documentation. Has somebody looked at this? Come on. Each thing is one line long here, and we don't use abbreviations. Matt, have you been paying attention to that? Who's looked at this documentation? Matt?
I did not review this before this meeting.
That's a shame.
Okay.
I'm not good at documentation, so I'm sorry.
Well, actually, I thought the stuff you have here is just fine, except that you need to follow these principles, right? I actually think the content is fine. It's just please follow the form.
Okay.
No, you can't do this. We don't have multiple sentences here. Come on. Just follow the rules, okay? One line,
Okay.
not multiple sentences, no abbreviations, right? Not too difficult, I think. Okay, so let's go through then. Some keys like will only produce data for HTML documents.
Yes, because you can have objects that are either PDF or
What
CSS.
Is an HTML document expression?
Oh, yes, that is not implemented. It's something that I wanted to mention. That in a previous meeting, I wrote this in the agenda. If you can,
I don't. Where is the agenda? I don't think I've seen the agenda.
The thing is that so there is currently an XML object thing.
Yes.
Yeah, that exposes a parsed version of the. But in an early meeting, we discussed, and I proposed that it could be nice to have a wrapper around XML object that knows the structure of HTML and provides easier access to HTML features like links, titles.
No, I agree, but there's the other way around. We also want that is being able to construct an HTML document and put it out there on the web is also something we want. So what is the structure of your proposed HTML document object?
This is HTML document. It would be just a wrapper like this.
I don't think that will work. I mean, okay, so that's fine, but there's also something that Ricardo was looking at for a while that is for specifying HTML, full HTML documents, right? That you can then just, deploy.
I don't know about that.
Okay, so that's what I'm telling you. I need to make this agree with that, right?
Okay.
And I think, Matt, do you know anything about that?
No, what's the symbol name that Ricardo was working on?
Well, I think it was actually HTML document as well.
Okay,
it's part of the panel language project.
Okay.
Okay, so that needs to be tracked down.
Dealing directly with XML object, it can be a bit painful, and
it's very painful. Yes, it's a bad idea.
Yes.
Right.
So if we know that we have HTML documents, there are certain rules and things that we can do to provide a higher interface.
No, I understand, but I think the correct answer is that HTML document is a symbolic representation of HTML that is an import for an actual raw HTML page. I don't think what you've got here is sufficient. I think this is part of what we need, but I think the full HTML document should be a nice symbolic representation of all of that HTML, and that's exactly what Ricardo was working on. Am I making sense?
Okay.
Yeah, I understand.
So what you're providing here is just, in this particular case, we can extract title and links. By the way, you don't seem to have a links.
Outgoing links.
What's that?
Outgoing links.
Oh, okay.
Because you have both incoming links and outgoing links when you crawl. But I'm not providing incoming links here, but
no, but I think we should just call this links. I think we should call this links
maybe.
Absolute URLs of links from this page, of links appearing on this page. Okay, makes sense. Okay, so let's keep going here. I don't think this is yet ready for prime time, this particular thing. Okay.
No, that is not currently implemented. What is currently implemented is an XML object.
Okay, so let's put that in there. So that's as part of the bigger thing. So this is, that is another case of this. So this would be XML object. XML object, symbolic XML object representing the body of the response. Is that correct?
Expression. Or XML object expression representing, I don't know. because everything is symbolic.
Well, right, representing the
parsed response, I don't know.
Representing what is it you're saying? The parsed
response.
Well, response body.
But only when it's HTML.
Okay. All right. So listen. Let's for this documentation, what we need to do is break this up, because when the thing, title and links. Okay. The keys in this association. The keys. What? The keys in this association in the association.
Yeah.
Supplied to the keys in the association to which the association keys in the association to which F is applied include applies F to an association containing data for each page and returns an association whose keys are the absolute URLs.
That is old, because right now we discussed this, and I'm not returning the keys. I am returning the output of each. So if you want the keys, you can just put
Okay. All right.
So this works exactly like map.
Okay, fine. Okay. So let's say here, crawls the web starting at root. Crawls the web. Well, actually, crawls the web starting at root.
Applying, not invoking. Sorry.
Yes, applying.
That's wrong. Sorry.
F to an association
describing,
representing, or an association of properties associated with each page. Properties. Applying F to information about association, giving information about each web page found. Right.
Why I use web object? Because it can also be
images. I get it. I get it. Crawls the web starting at root, applying F. Well, crawls all starts with at root and crawls all accessible pages, web pages in the same domain.
Well, if you want.
Is that correct? I don't know. What is that? What you no? What is the default?
Yes, the same domain.
Okay, that's the default. So that's what this case corresponds to. Starts at root. Well, actually, gives a list of the results of applying F to an association.
Wow, complex.
Well, that's what it is. Gives a list of the results.
Yeah. Describing each.
Wait a minute. Applying F to an association describing.
Each web object that can be accessed from root.
Web object
that can be accessed.
Yeah, wait a minute. Found root. By crawling.
Yeah. Sounds right.
Found by web crawling, starting at root and staying in the same domain. There's a list of results of applying F to an association. to an association for gives a list of results of applying F to an association for each web object found by crawling the web starting at root.
Stop.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Let me. If I,
So now we want to say web crawl map f root n goes only n goes at most n levels, follows at most n links, follows at most n levels of links
yeah,
from
that's
root.
right.
Okay, so now okay, you're still making this really strange crackling noise, Nicholas. If you could try to figure out what that is, it'd be really good. The okay, so the function f for each page reached, for each page found, the function f is applied to an association for each web object found. Function f is applied with keys including. Okay, for web objects corresponding to HTML pages, the following additional keys are included. Yes? Does that make sense?
So I should split into two groups. Okay.
No, I'll do this. Let me do it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so here, okay, I'm going to move these over now. Okay. Okay, so this one, absolute URL of the web object. Okay, do we want to have a relative URL? Let's do that.
Relative to what?
Relative to root.
Why? I really don't.
Because it will be convenient, because it won't make as big of a mess. If you're trying to give somebody a map of things and you're in the same domain.
Yes.
URL of the web object relative to root. And if it isn't relative to root, if it's somewhere completely different, then you just give the full URL. Right, because otherwise it would be something like ... isn't that right? I mean,
but you could be crawling a set of roots. Root should be able to be a list.
Okay, well then let's document that.
Yeah.
So, okay.
I wouldn't add relative URL.
Okay, fine.
Right.
Okay, that's fine.
Think
fine. Okay.
But I think we should have much better URL handling functions in Mathematica, and we don't have right now.
I thought we went to a lot of trouble to put in lots of URL handling. So if you have proposals for additional URL handling, please make them.
Okay.
Okay, we've got a whole system of URL parsing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if you don't like it, please complain. Okay, let's document this, okay, for a second. So follows at most starts from all of the root sub I, right? I think we should say, by default, web crawl map follows only links that remain in the same domain, that links whose destinations are in the same domain. Is that right?
Yes.
By the way, I'm 95% certain that you're rubbing something against your microphone. It'd be really good if you didn't do that.
Oh, sorry, sorry.
Okay. Web crawl map can process any type of web object, but will follow links only on HTML pages. Is that correct?
It will also follow links on CSS pages.
Okay.
CSS document, because CSS can also link.
Okay, follow links can process any type of web object, but will follow links only on HTML and CSS pages. Okay, for each web object found, the function f is applied to an association containing keys including. Okay, so we're getting rid of relative URL. Okay, next up, what is the next thing? Should we say the content type? Do you think that's the next thing to mention, or do you think we should go to the body?
Both should be there.
No. I understand that both should be there. I'm just asking. Okay.
Order.
Okay. Could you please try to get less background noise, please? Please. Okay. Here, these are just in alphabetical order, but I think if you think content type is more important than these other things, then let's put it higher up, or let's put them in alphabetical order.
Okay.
Question from our live stream: what about things like XHTML? Can we handle those?
If the parser handles it, there's no problem. Okay,
well, let's check that, but I think it's the case that we should be able to do this, right? Correct?
Yes.
Okay, by the way, if you wanted to know if the link you followed is an HTTPS link, is there an easy way to tell that?
If it is an HTTPS link,
but you can look at the URL, I guess.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I think that we should probably support some other thing. What? Can we please try to get less background noise? Could we what is when you parse the URL? Okay. The first what is it called? The thing that HTTP is. What is it called? The scheme.
Scheme. That's the scheme.
So I wonder whether we should have domain, scheme, and domain as part of a thing that you can immediately extract here. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, but you can also get that from the URL.
No, I understand that. But the question is whether we want this to be, if we want this function to be nice and convenient, do we want to be able to?
I don't see that would be very useful.
Okay.
Content type is totally useful because you will decide what to do. But in what case you will decide what to do based on the scheme?
Well, it's just a question of if you want to find out, is this an HTTPS site, for example?
Yeah.
And is this domain, did I stay in the same domain? See what I'm saying? So path, I believe, is the thing not including the domain. Is that correct? Or is it no domain that just doesn't include the scheme?
Path is just the last part. Is what you call the relative URL before.
Okay. Okay, let's look at a few more of these things. Unfortunately, we're going to run out of time before too long here. And by the way, this is the page we're looking at. Is that correct, or is there more stuff that we should be looking at here? Let's just look at your notes for the agenda. Okay.
Yeah, well, I mentioned the cache thing because I have implemented a very simple cache for this function, but the storage for this cache is too simple. Right now it's just an index that is comprised of .m file that is loaded in memory.
You mean .wl files?
Yes.
.wl files. Okay. So,
yes.
Well, and why aren't they MX files?
No, the thing is that it should be something more like a very simple database, key value database. That you don't and I this also needs some kind of
different places where we need key value databases. But I mean, what you're doing is you have. Could you please try and stop making background noise, please? Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, whatever. Okay. So you say you want to have a key value database, but you don't have one. Is that correct?
Yes, and I also need some kind of mechanism to keep the cache small, and I don't have that right now. Some management of that cache. We could also go without the cache for.
No. What's the cache for? The cache is. I mean, you've got to have a cache, otherwise you can't deal with not visiting the same page again.
No, it's not like that. I keep track of the pages that I have already visited. The cache is just if you do repeated calls to this function, it won't download the page the second time.
Okay. That should be done with the local cache function, which we already have. Okay, which puts it in the local object store. You know that function?
I know it exists, but I haven't used it.
Okay, so there is a function called local cache, and that's exactly what you should use because it already has, cache management and so on. It's the right thing to use. You just use it. I mean, if you do a URL read, it will just do exactly the right thing. Am I making sense?
Okay, I will check that out.
Okay, and we probably may need an option here whether to cache or not, right? Because if you know you're only going there once, there's no reason to cache.
Yep, totally.
Okay. So someplace here we're going to need a caching option. I'll just make a note of that. I think local cache may have some possible options itself. Okay, the next point here. Yeah, Seth Chandler from our live stream is asking, can there be a regular expression pattern restriction on URLs that are followed? I agree, that would be very useful. You understand the suggestion here, Nicholas?
Maybe the microphone finally died.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Yes, that's a good idea.
So the question is, how would we want to specify that? Because it seems like that is a critical, I mean, to me, that would be the most obvious thing to do would be to have something in that second argument that instead of saying quotes, Wolfram HTTP, I mean, that you want to do the following, that you could either say Wolfram.com, well, how would we do this? Because we'd have to say slash, see, this is a little bit tricky because on the one hand, we want to take it as the root, and on the other hand, we want to take it as the, let's see, how do we do this in text, in the text indexing functions? Create text search index. Don't we have a mechanism there for doing a regex on the file names? Do we have that?
No.
It's the same. No, but there we don't have any crawlability, right? There we just literally list the files, so it's a different story.
But you can also index a whole directory.
So we have the same issue there, do we? Don't we have? I thought we had some mechanism.
And so it would be maybe it would be nice to have some way of filtering the files. I only want text files to be indexed.
Yes, right. Well, I mean, I think that the obvious thing to do in create search index would be to have a regex there as well. But the question here is, you understand that if there's a regex, do you understand the issue? I mean, that we can't both have that and have this. Those I don't think can be equivalent. Am I making sense? Because otherwise, well, I mean, unless somewhat hackily we say if it's a regex, if you say that, for example, or .html, so that is a one-level thing, right? That's saying just look at the files on this level. Does that make sense? But it's not really saying, go to wolfram.com, then follow the links and, go only to files of that pattern.
I think that, well, first, the regex could be applied maybe to just the path, not the domain as well. The user maybe want to select what to use.
What?
That maybe the regex could be applied to just the path, not the.
No, I understand, but what that would look like is something more like, if we put something in here, we would say instead web crawl map of the root and then a pattern.
And or maybe you could also provide a criteria so that the user passes a function that will be queried, and it will return true if you want that URL to be crawled, and it will return false if you don't want that URL to be crawled. And in that function, the user could use regular expressions or whatever he feels like.
Okay, we have a number of interesting comments from our live stream here. So one is, what about links that are generated only after loading JavaScript? Yes, that's a horrible mess. What do we have to say about that right now?
About what, sorry?
Links available only after loading JavaScript. So that relates to, that has to connect to the web execute functionality, right? Because web execute can deal with that. Am I making sense? Have you been following the web execute project?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so it's using, what's it called? It's using Chrome and Firefox, their WebDriver systems. I think it's called WebDriver, right? And so it can do any, it can do anything a web browser can do, including follow links. Right? Am I making sense? So that, I mean, I think web execute, oh yeah, we might even have, let's see, I think it even supports things like, I've not yet gotten used to having this at the top. If I say web image of, let's see whether this works. This will go out and execute that. It will go out and well, great. It'll go out and generate error messages. Okay. Well, not working yet. Maybe it needs that. I don't know. In any case, oh yeah, wow, look at that. So that then, okay, and that can go follow the links and do a bunch of other stuff. Okay, web execute does that. So we should tie that into this, because that should be a thing that it's possible to do from here, right? Because that will, let's take a look. I think web execute may have documentation already. Yeah, here we go. So this has page links, right? So if I say web execute this, so I don't know the page links is going through, I think that's going through the actual, well, it doesn't seem to work yet. Oh, maybe this is different. Oh, no. You have to start, that's right. You have to start a session. To do web execute, you have to start a session and then you walk through pages and you can do that. Am I making sense? Did you understand what I said?
Yes.
Right, so that's what we have to investigate, is how to do that. Okay, that's the first point. Second point is, yeah, people are commenting on having both whitelist and blacklist URL patterns, and I agree with that. Right, yeah. Well, I mean, right. So there's crawling criteria. So what we want here is, and I think you already have that, is a whether to call. What the heck is that? So this allows you to give a function, does it not? That tells you which links to go to on a page.
Yeah, but that is a bit too much, because it allows you to provide a function to do the whole extraction of links.
Yeah, but okay, but that's a good thing if you're using web execute, for example.
Yes.
But I mean, what's being pointed out on our live stream is that it's useful to have, for the pattern here, it's useful to both have things that you include and things that you exclude. So it's rather what one wants is something more like included links and excluded links.
Isn't it simpler just to offer a way of passing a function to filter a selection function?
Well, not if it's going to be a regex. That's a big mess then. It's easier to just give a regex here.
Yeah.
But I mean, the question is, what does the regex look like? Because is it the relative link or is it the complete path? And is it, these included links could include the whole thing right back to the scheme and so on. Like you could say, I only want to go to HTTPS links. So we don't really have, I mean, the real thing that's calling for is some kind of URL pattern type mechanism, right? That's what this really seems to be asking for. Does that make sense? Because if we had that, then you could, because what this is doing, well, let's see. We are going to run out of time here, unfortunately, despite the nice activity of our live stream. And somebody Jason Cunliffe is asking about smart shells and Emacs tools to handle paths like Helm, IDEO. I don't know these. Is that Elm? Maybe, I'm not sure. Right. So I don't. Do you know what smart shell? Do you know what is being talked about there?
Smart shell? No, I don't know what that is.
Okay. Well, more. Okay, but the basic point here is we don't really have a good scheme. Now in the case of file system map, we have sort of the same issue, right? Because in file system map, we could be going, to root a certain level. Now, what do we need? Yeah, include directories. Oh, that's whether to actually go to the directory, so to speak. Whether to take the directory, it's like ls-ld type thing. Am I making sense? That's different from files to include and exclude. So again, file system map could have the same type of thing if we had some good scheme for including or excluding files of a particular type. Now here, yeah, why have we not run across this? Why have we not run across this issue in file system map? I'm just very surprised. Why? Oh, yeah, include files with names of the specified forms. That I'm completely blind. That's the option there, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, but that is asking for pattern for file names. Okay, file name forms star PDB, for example. Okay, but what that's not doing is, so that's the final element of the path, basically. So, I mean, in principle, we
Yes.
could have a file name forms here, because clearly file name forms could be set to accept file name forms or whatever, and that could be except whatever if you want everything except blah blah blah. I mean, it could be any pattern.
Yep.
So the issue here is now, I mean, that is probably the most useful that's probably the most useful selector, is give me only .gif files or something. A separate issue is well, let's see. Sandra on our live stream is saying file name forms with a whitelist, but I think with accept it's a blacklist as well. I think accept gives you the blacklist.
Well, what if you want both? That can be a list. Can that be a list?
Well, that's interesting. I mean, no, you can use an alternatives, right?
Okay.
You get right. I mean, you can use the pattern language. Yeah, I mean, by the way, for people on the live stream who are wondering about wget and curl and so on, obviously, those are, that's a bunch of the underlying technology here. But you can use, you can import, for example, what is it called? War file or work file? What is it? Work. Is that right? Web archive file, right? And then this, I mean, in principle, okay, so that's an interesting question. Could you use a web crawl map on a work file? See what I'm saying? Because you might want to read the thing into memory. I mean, okay, can it work on the output from importing a work file? I mean, I think what it's doing, obviously, that's making a data set there. I don't know. That seems like a worthwhile thing to look at, because this is giving, I see, this is giving HTTP request, HTTP response pair.
Because a work file has multiple entries, multiple records.
What do you mean? Yeah, of course. I mean, but it's like a frozen image of a crawl, isn't it?
In a sense, yes.
Okay. So, and I think, I mean, I don't know, what does wget return? Does it return a walk file? What does it return? Or does it just stick things in directories? What does it do?
wget. by default just download whatever you need to.
No, I understand that, but when it's downloading multiple files, what does it do?
Well, if you get multiple files with wget, you just get multiple files in your local folders.
With what names?
You can use wget to mirror with the same.
I understand, but you can't. It is not the case that any web structure maps to a directory hierarchy, right? So what does it do if it doesn't map to a directory hierarchy?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, I think we should wrap up here because I'm super late. So we've clearly got some more thinking and some more figuring out to do, but I think we've made some progress. And next time, please get a microphone that doesn't have this stupid background noise.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay, and then we can. Okay, I gotta go. Okay. Well, thank you to the people on the live stream. It's very helpful comments today. And I'll push back these file things. Let's please try and get another meeting in the next 3 or 4 days on this.
Yeah.
And take it from there. Okay. Thanks a lot, guys. See you all soon. Bye.
Bye.